Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the political editors of The Guardian and The Sun, Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole. Welcome to both of you with us from now until just before midnight. So let's check out the front pages then, shall we? Starting with the Eye, which leads with the grave warning at COP27 from the UN's Secretary-General that the planet is on a highway to climate hell. The Daily Mail focuses on climate activists demanding the UK should pay £1 trillion in damages to poorer countries affected by climate change, with the headline, "Just what planet are they on?" The Metro remarks on the warm rapport between Rishi Sunak and Emmanuel Macron at the summit after Mr Sunak's predecessor, Liz Truss, cast doubt on whether the French president was an ally. While the Telegraph says a major gas deal with the United States is set to ease Britain's energy crisis. Alongside reporting from COP, Pippa has a story in The Guardian with allegations that the Cabinet Office Minister and former Defence Secretary, Sir Gavin Williamson, told a senior civil servant to slit their throat. Sir Gavin denies the claims. The Financial Times understands the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt will use his autumn statement to announce a hike in inheritance tax to try to plug the £34 billion black hole in public finances. Well, the Times says benefits and pensions will rise only in line with inflation, apparently breaking the pledge to stick with the government's triple lock. The Express carries the Prime Minister's pledge to get a grip on the migrant crisis. The Mirror has an exclusive about a Channel 4 documentary which it says will show the dissection of the body of a young mum who died of cancer. And The Star has Dame Barbara Windsor's widower sharing fond tributes.
Yeah, it's open season on Gavin Williamson now, the former Defence Secretary. He was, of course, fired from that job in very controversial circumstances, accused of leaking. He was then appointed Education Secretary in a sort of tawdry deal with Boris Johnson when he came to power, and was fired for that job for being useless. So it was a surprise to everyone when Rishi Sunak brought him back. Everyone suspected what was clearly quite obvious was that Gavin Williamson had played quite a key role in doing the numbers for not only getting rid of Boris Johnson, but for installing Rishi Sunak, second time lucky, and was awarded with a sort of non-made-up job in the Cabinet Office, but a right to attend Cabinet, where it appears he doesn't actually have a huge amount to do, but I think it's more about just keeping him in the tent rather than actually giving him anything to run, which his track record hasn't been brilliant at. So after those bullying allegations emerged at the weekend, text messages he sent a former chief whip, which were aggressive, which were sweary, which Rishi Sunak himself has said are unpleasant. Now, lots more, I suspect, stories. We're going to see people coming out of the woodwork saying, well, actually, when he was X, he did this to me, and when I was Y, he did this to X. So Pippa's got a very good example of this. When he was Defence Secretary, he was alleged, he denies it, but alleged to have said some pretty vile things to a civil servant. Now, someone said to me this morning, when they read those text messages over the weekend, they thought that Gavin had mellowed somewhat in his older age, and actually they weren't surprised that there were lots of sort of very aggressive things that he'd said to people being circulated. You know, some of this was in the public domain as well. Back when he was arguing against the Treasury, arguing against Downing Street for further defence rises when he was in his job, he ran an extraordinarily aggressive campaign for more money for the MOD, one that actually made Theresa May quite uncomfortable and wasn't ultimately that successful because, you know, as someone once said, you can't negotiate with someone when they're at that extreme. So no surprise now to see lots more allegations starting to surface. And it's become a real problem for Rishi Sunak because he stood on the steps of Downing Street, 10 days ago, and said, I will run a government of integrity at every level. We now know that he knew about this allegation that we made against him, not perhaps the full details, but the allegation before he appointed Gavin Williamson. And you wonder how long he's going to, this new government is going to allow it to be bogged down with such lurid claims as on the front of The Guardian today.
Yes, I'm intrigued by you saying that he delivered, key numbers in the departure of Boris Johnson and the enthronement, if I can put it that way, of Rishi Sunak. We'll come back to that in a minute. And also the idea that is it the job of the chief whip to be threatening, and is he so well schooled in the dark arts that he can't give it up even when the job has passed him by? But anyway, the allegations in your paper then, Pippa, do pick up your story.
I'm sorry about that. My Wi-Fi connection was misbehaving. Yes, so I was told by a senior civil servant that worked at the Ministry of Defence when Gavin Williamson was Defence Secretary that that he conducted what the civil servant described as a sustained bullying campaign. And there was a couple of examples which really stood out to me of allegations. One, which Gavin Williamson allegedly told this individual to slit their throat, and another one when the then Defence Secretary allegedly told this Whitehall official to jump out of the window. But I understand there were other examples as well. And this was both these comments were made in front of other civil servants in a meeting. And I'm told by this Whitehall aide that they reported the behaviour unofficially to the MOD's head of HR, but decided not to put in an official complaint, but nevertheless took contemporaneous notes. So as Harry, I think, has been telling you, Gavin Williamson is in a difficult position anyway with other allegations that have been made about his behaviour. And I think what this one does in the front of the Guardian today suggests that it was more widespread. It raises further questions about Rishi Sunak's judgment in appointing into a role that means he attends cabinet when some of his behaviour is questionable at best and actually really quite outrageous at worst. I should say that he denies the allegation of bullying. But my understanding is that there is no denial of the words which we're quoting in The Guardian, the words which he allegedly used. He just, I understand, doesn't feel that they could be described as bullying behaviour.
Yes, absolutely. A strong denial, certainly, from Sir Gavin Williamson, who said he strongly rejected this allegation and have enjoyed good working relationships with the many brilliant officials I have worked with across government. So, as you say, no specific allegations have ever, he said, been brought to my attention. But the focus most certainly on him. We'll keep an eye on that. In the meantime, let's head to news from Egypt. The Eye, Harry, really strong words from the UN chief. Effectively, we're heading towards doom with the accelerator down. But I just want to ask you how you felt our, two most recent... Oh, I say that. I forgot about Liz Truss in the middle. How dare I do that with you who wrote about her? Anyway, Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, if I name them, that might be easier for me. How you think they both fared and what impact they might have made at the summit?
Well, Rishi Sunak's been keen to play up. Oh, he's so delighted and pleased that Boris Johnson is there. And it shows what a brilliant world leader the UK is on the world stage. But you have to wonder whether he would have actually U-turned on going to COP had his predecessor not decided to, as a guest of the Egyptian government, turn up. And it very much was the Boris show this morning. He was speaking to the New York Times, which in itself is quite amusing, given the sort of slightly hostile coverage the New York Times has of Britain generally, Boris Johnson's premiership, Brexit. It runs these long pieces, endlessly talking down Britain. So it was quite amusing to see him engaging with them like that. But he did. He proved he's not going to hold back as a former prime minister. You just see he doesn't think he's done yet. He was there saying, "I'm here as the spirit of Glasgow. I'm the one that's keeping the flame going." And then he actually tore in to his successor Liz Truss by saying we shouldn't frack up Britain or be drilling in our green and pleasant land. He had to go his old newspaper, the Telegraph, and some of his own aides who was against wind power, just saying that oil isn't the answer. So he really did plant a flag in Egypt today. And then Rishi Sunak came in looking a little bit sheepish. He has slightly been dragged there. He didn't want to go. He'd made a very early decision in his premiership not to. And he had this sort of awkward feeling of, sort of Britain, yes, well represented, but, definitely two sort of big players now sort of shadow boxing around a very small summit. They're all locked in this sort of nice resort in Egypt. So quite an unusual situation to find. You could understand perhaps, if two politicians from different parties, Tony Blair or Gordon Brown, and then their successors, David Cameron and the like, both being at something. But it's very rare to see a man who was prime minister just a matter of weeks ago and his successor pretending they all get on and all like each other when actually, you and I both know they want to stick pins in each other.
Yeah, but it's a big issue, isn't it? That's the point, I guess. The Guardian leading on this story, really quoting the Prime Minister of Barbados, effectively suggesting that poorer countries are the real victims of the climate crisis in more ways than one. And just very quickly, Pippa, because we're overrunning here, the Daily Mail, just what planet are they on? The suggestion about reparations for past fossil fuel use need to be paid towards those who are now suffering. This idea of loss and damage. £1 trillion is now the demand, they suggest, from one campaign organisation.
Yeah, this is a conversation which is dominating the summit thus far about whether Western industrialised nations owe it to poorer ones who are on the receiving end, obviously, of the worst impact of climate change, countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh suffering from flooding and extreme weather events, and whether the West has a responsibility to finance them, to help equip them better to deal with climate change. And Number 10 said this morning that they supported money to developing countries to tackle climate change, but very much steered away from the word reparations, which some have described it as, and which the Mail, obviously, story is about. I suspect we're going to hear a lot more of this in the days ahead.
Yeah, indeed so. Lots more coverage on that to come. Also, in the next part of our programme, a possible deal with the United States on the horizon, which could ease the energy crisis here at home. We will talk more about that in just a moment. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole from The Guardian and The Sun, respectively. Harry, let's go to the Telegraph, shall we? A gas deal set to ease our energy crisis. Rishi Sunak, the paper says, poised to announce a major gas deal with the US after the COP27 climate change crisis. You are smiling. Should we not be so confident?
No, I think this has been ready to be announced for some time. I think it was due to be announced the week that Liz Truss resigned, but obviously she never got round to it. This has been something that has been reported in quite extensively, actually, that they've been looking to. The UK has been looking to sign various gas deals with other countries to protect against blackouts, essentially by bulk buying large amounts of gas at an inflated price. There was a similar negotiations going on with Norway, which I think collapsed actually over the large asking price Norwegians were asking. And the fact is that global gas prices are actually falling. So you don't want to get locked in a situation where you buy loads of gas now for a higher price. Now, this I understand has been going on since the summer, really, when Deem Zahawi, the ex-chancellor, the chancellor before this current one, I think, no, 2 chancellors ago, flew out to the US and started negotiating this deal in the end of August. It was then discussed by Biden and Truss throughout her premiership, and it was actually, I think, ready to go before her government all blew up. So it's good to see Rishi Sunak getting some early wins for his hard yarns he's put in the 10 days so far.
Yes, and I'm glad you're getting as confused as I am about how many people have chundered through numbers 10 and 11 and the rest of it. Anyway, so just very quickly, we go to the Metro and the Express, Pippa. Sunak turns on the charm, is how the Metro describes that meeting with the French president. But the Daily Express is all wrapped into, I will get a grip on the migrant crisis. Has he taken over this issue, do you think?
Is that a final deal is imminent, not announced today, but we're expecting it at some point soon. It's the first face-to-face meeting the two leaders have had. And of course, the issue which has dominated British politics, or one of several issues which has dominated British politics in the last couple of weeks, is the small boats and immigration problem and how the government's going to tackle with it. Sunak's keen to get to grips with it. They need the French's help with that in terms of patrolling on French beaches. I suspect we'll hear a lot more about that when the details are announced in the coming days.